Hello, everyone. Welcome to D&D in a Castle Dungeon Master Deep Dive. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Eric Campbell. I say tonight, it could be in the morning where you are or afternoon, but today. And so I'm going to welcome Mr. Eric Campbell.
Hi. Excuse me. Hello.
Hello.
You guys hear me?
Hello,
Chugging my
welcome.
coffee right now.
Great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
So, Eric, you are going to be joining us at D&D in a Castle this summer in the US, July 6 to 10 at our Mohican Castle in America. So that's very exciting. You haven't been with us for a long time.
Yeah,
Tell us how you're feeling about that.
Oh man, I have been eager to get back for so long. I've been so looking for opportunities to get back to D&D Castle. Things just haven't worked out scheduling wise, and I'm just really happy to finally be getting back. The last time I did was 2019. I think was the last time I was in that was when it was still pretty fresh, like very new, and it was really exciting. It was also my very first time out of the country when we did it. I'd never left the United States before. So that was really exciting. And actually cross the pond and see the old world, as they say. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this here in the United States too, because this will be my first time in the Midwest. So I am not very well traveled, unfortunately. Up here, yes, D&D, obviously. I'm from all the different worlds, but in real life, yeah, no, sadly, the introvert thing is very real. So yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can hear myself now too, so I know you can hear me. I was like, oh, that's nice not being able to hear myself. And then you couldn't hear me either, so that's sad. I'm saying I'm very excited to hear about what you've got planned for your campaign at D&D in a Castle this summer.
Yeah. I couldn't pass up the opportunity. It was something I'd been thinking about for a while doing. When my first game of Dungeons and Dragons was in the beginning of 7th grade, and I had just transferred to a new school, and I was still coming out of the satanic panic because I lived with a very Southern Baptist family. My best friend next door neighbor was a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and so it was like I was surrounded by that. And but then I moved to a new school, and I met my very first D&D group. Would become my very first D&D group, and the setting that I was introduced to was Greyhawk. It was the very first D&D thing I would ever play, and it was a lot of homebrew stuff. But I still remember opening up the box set and seeing my very first hex map, because my first dungeon master Curtis had the Greyhawk box set, and looking through all of the hex maps and the like red see-through like weird, like all of the character stats and the D&D cards that we had back then. So when this opportunity came up, because the newest edition of D&D, they opened up the Greyhawk setting again, and they did something with it that I really love, which is they really stressed that they didn't want players or GMs dungeon masters to feel like they had to know the entire world lore, and because they were really trying to kind of angle into the original feel of Greyhawk, which was when it first came out, there wasn't a whole lot to it. It just kind of got released, and there were like things mentioned all over the maps that were never really explained yet, and they were kind of like little blurbs about them because the world was being built as it was rolled out. So I was like, this would be a really spectacular way to return to the very first world I ever played in and introduce either old or new players back into Greyhawk in this new era of Dungeons and Dragons, and I couldn't pass it up. So I was really excited to do it. I had all these grand designs, because every time I run a D&D game, it's always this grand design kind of style game. The game that I ran in 2019 was actually Council of Worms, which is a setting that's been out of print since the late 90s, where players play dragons, and we had to kind of homebrew a bunch of stuff. This time around, I was like, I do all these big things with D&D, and what I really want to do is focus on a campaign that puts as much emphasis on on like uncovering mystery and combat and all that other stuff, but that puts as much emphasis on the quiet moments around a campfire after a long day's travel. With the days that we have to play at D&D in a castle, there's so much opportunity to give space and room to those wonderful, filling, intimate moments between party members who are journeying and risking their lives together. And I love that. So I was like, Greyhawk, make it really personal and go. That's kind of like the foundation for the campaign.
Great. For those who haven't played in Greyhawk before, or maybe new to the game, tell us a little bit about that setting and what you love about it.
Oh, Greyhawk is great because there's two things. Initially, the thing I loved about Greyhawk was there's a huge tapestry of lore that has been built out over the past, 50 years since it's been in print. But, or I guess Greyhawk, Greyhawk before it was officially came out, but like, there's all this established lore, but a lot of it is really filled out over the decades that it's been in print, in like books and novels, and eventual like staggering the releases of like 3.5 supplements and into even the later editions. But there's so much room to do whatever you would like in that world setting and still be a part of the world events. You can technically do that with any D&D campaign, but Greyhawk feels really flexible because it's kind of built out of this homebrew mindset. It's such an OG setting. So what I love about it is that it really has that old flavor of D&D that I was enraptured with. There was the other reason why I was really excited about doing it. Well, I guess there's one other one, but the other one is that there's just a lot of really fantastic classical monsters that break away from the setting that everyone is familiar with. Everyone knows Forgotten Realms because of 5th edition. Like, we're all very familiar with Toril. But Oerth is really great because it introduces a lot of the dynamics that you see in Forgotten Realms, but it does it in a completely different manner. There's shining kingdoms in Greyhawk. There's orders of knights. You do have Cormyr in Forgotten Realms, but there's just so many specialized sections of Greyhawk that really capture different flavors. And then there's the free city of Greyhawk. And the very last reason that I was really excited to run this is I actually just wrote, alongside with Jody Hauser, we just published, the second issue comes out this month. We did the origin story for Eddie Munson in Stranger Things. So
right.
we wrote that comic for Dark Horse, and that campaign takes place in Greyhawk. So I was like, I've got to run Greyhawk. This is going to be too good. So
yeah, so you must be very familiar with that setting.
Yeah, a lot of research. Yep.
I also see we have some comments. Just want to repeat, if you have any comments or questions for me or for Eric, that would be great to hear. We'd love to answer or address them. You can just put them in the comments, and we'll feed them to Eric as we go. So I just have a woo, Eric, in the comments, and a hello. So hello to everybody who is watching. We're sitting here talking with Eric Campbell, who's going to be coming to D&D Castle this summer in the USA, July 6th to 10th. If you want to learn more, you can click on the QR code in the top corner of the screen. So Eric, can you tell us anything about the story you're building for the campaign? What type of game is it going to be? What kind of, themes is it going to be around? Maybe what the hook is? Tell us what you're thinking.
So the big challenge to building this campaign is that I was so excited to do something that felt classic that I realized a pitch or trying to describe the campaign would be very challenging, because I would just be describing the whole that is D&D. Like, I would just be like, oh, it's a, intrigue, adventure, the whole thing. I was like, oh man, like I would literally just be describing it. The idea of getting into like a more classic styled adventure. But thankfully, I didn't stick with that. I just kept building out. And I began to realize I was building a campaign that really revolved around a lot of intrigue and a lot of conspiracy. And I started realizing that the whole of the campaign expanded outwards, and that the adventurers who are going to go on this campaign were probably going to find themselves in a situation where it's not, it wouldn't be like Unlikely Heroes. It's more of just like slipping while you're trying to hike, and then all of a sudden you've turned something into a giant boulder when it was going to be a snowball, kind of, So this campaign is really going to focus a lot on stumbling in on a conspiracy that could rock the entire face of the continent and maybe even spell the end to the free city of Greyhawk itself. So
high stakes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's with Greyhawk. The other thing that I haven't decided yet, but the other thing I'm toying with is I did this with my Council of Worms game. In Council of Worms, the players were playing dragons. When they're leveling up, I couldn't just keep them hatchling dragons forever. So we played for 3 days, and the first day they were hatchling dragons. In the second game, 300 years had passed. So they were picking up where they left off, and they were watching after like the humans that they had known when they were hatchlings and their descendants and stuff like that. And then the last game, they were ancient dragons fighting this god. So in this one, I was thinking like this could be a decade-spanning conspiracy, because I want to do like especially if we're playing a classic D&D setting, I want to give players like low level, mid level, higher level. And I like the idea of, instead of doing like a through line, giving people the option of playing through the emotional content of what do you think your character was doing these past 4 years since you last saw each other, and now you're meeting again. What have you learned? Very Dragonlance in that regard, of like the companions coming back together after so many years. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's going to be kind of a decade-spanning campaign that uncovers a conspiracy that has been building up for many, many hundreds of years.
Right. Yeah. And are you sort of I know probably both, but more narrative focused, more combat focused, more role play focused? What's sort of the balance on those spectra?
So I've tried to pin that down, because that's a very good question to ask Dungeon Master when you're trying to get a flavor of like what kind of DM you're going to be playing with. And the thing is I'm such a fan of all of it that what I tend to do is I start from, I don't know if this answers, I hope this answers your question, but so much of what I do in Dungeons and Dragons and as a storyteller is really inspired by how much I love cinema and how much I love screenwriting and acting, and that, and even some directing. Like that is what pulled me in when I first started doing this professionally 10 years ago. And the way I guess I would describe myself is I'm somebody who really loves getting into narrative until the initiative rolls, and then I'm somebody who really loves narrating combat. And then like my favorite style of I'm the type of dungeon master that doesn't want, I don't want to say he casts fireball, roll the dice, okay, that's the damage and your turn. Like, no, I like going into describing, seeing the ripples of heat emanate from the mage's hand as they extend their arms outwards. Everyone in the room starts to feel like the air gets sucked out of the room as this fireball explodes forth. Like, I like casting magic needs to be an event, can't just ever be cast aside as a thing you do as an action. Like, I want everyone to be awed by it, which is another thing I've added to the Greyhawk campaign, which is the idea that if you are a spellcaster, you are like 1 in 25 people that can even do that. And so it makes magic unique and stuff like that. I love narrative. That's my bread and butter. But I also love just a good cinematic beatdown and giving players the ability to feel like they're Captain America in the elevator surrounded by Hydra agents. Like I want to give those kinds of combat scenes. So I enjoy all of it, but narrative is definitely where I start.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're a writer. You mentioned the comic book that you've been working on, and also script writing. Tell us a little bit about your background in that way. What kinds of things you've worked on, things you've done. How did you get to this?
So it's funny to me because most people know me as Eric the writer. But when I moved to Los Angeles in 2000, it was to be Eric the actor. And I did that up until about 2015. I was doing sketch comedy was my primary thing. So I did a lot of that. I did independent films. And I jumped on the hype train with web series when Felicia Day really started smashing through the barriers and created a web series and went to Netflix. It was the writing, though, that got everyone's attention. In Los Angeles, it's pretty hard. There is admittedly a shortage of bearded white dudes in the world, but
So
but
few.
yeah, it's difficult, but I didn't quite break through the boundary, so I just kept pushing the writing, and that's what got me noticed. And ever since then, writing has been my segue into all the acting that I've done. So writing got me into Geek and Sundry, where I got hired. Initially, I was hired as Felicia Day's writer for a bunch of her shows, which then got me into social media, which then immediately landed me the director of development job, where I pretty much developed the shows at Geek and Sundry. If they got greenlit, they were passed to me, and I developed them and put them out and got them ready to go. So I helped Jason Carl create LA by Night. Jason Carl is also one of your great
Dungeon
Dungeon
Masters.
Masters. Yeah. So I'm familiar with that entire cast. And helped put that together. I did a lot of shows over Geek and Sundry, and I've been running games independently ever since. And when I'm not doing that, my day job, I work at Geeky Tees, one of the largest gaming stores on the West Coast, maybe the United States. We're like 20,000 square feet of like board gaming and like RPGs. So I'm pretty entrenched, but that's basically what I'm doing. And when I'm not doing that, I'm writing scripts and for motion capture studios and for Dark Horse Comics right now.
Nice. And what drew you to dungeon mastering specifically? Were you just wanting to get your friends to play and you had to DM, or was there something specific about being a dungeon master that you wanted to explore?
Yeah, curiously enough, there were two elements that one was kind of leading into it. The first one was I was the worst player you could have at your table because I always wanted to change my character. I used to drive my dungeon masters and my storytellers just out of their minds because I always wanted to change. I would play a character for like a month and I'd be like, I don't know if I'm feeling it. And I'd want to change it again. So they couldn't build story. I didn't know it at the time, but what I wanted to do was play every character. And that's why, and I ran games off and on, but they never stuck. Like, I don't know what it was, but they just never stuck. Like I've been in so many games. I think the longest game I ever ran was maybe 6 months, and then it would just fall apart. And this was kind of the track record all the way up until my late 20s. What really changed everything was becoming a storyteller on Geek and Sundry. When all of a sudden they gave me a time slot and told me to run a game, and I had to show up and run a game every week for this group. And I became completely hooked because it was giving me my director, acting, writing, was scratching all of that at the same time. So that's what stuck. And I realized how much I absolutely adored it because it felt like I was basically just writing out loud and improvising with my players, collaboratively building a story with each other and using all the tools that I learned from directing and acting to raise the stakes and use all the tools that I used when I was like dissecting character and going through motivations and stuff like that. Now all of a sudden I'm using that to like read what my players are doing to find out like what their character wants, and then kind of, poking them a little bit, giving them those moments where I can use backstory and whatnot to juice it up. One of my favorite things that I do, that I totally stole this from one of my dungeon masters back in the day, a guy named Zach Hennessy, who used to run games for us all the times. He would have us submit a backstory. Mm-hmm. So we would submit like a 3-paragraph backstory, and he'd take it, and then he'd do whatever he wanted with it. So like if we were, say I was orphaned and blah, 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 and my parents were killed when the orcs attacked or whatever the hell, you would find yourself like a year into the game and your parents would show up. And they were the ones behind everything and you were their tool, and he used to do stuff like that, and I loved that. It just made good TV. So I've totally taken that in and played with it. So those are the things that I became obsessed with, and that's what led me into being a dungeon master today. Like I can't get enough of it.
Nice. And so you've been once to D&D in a Castle before, back in 2019. Which was a little while ago now. What do you remember about it? What impression did it leave you with?
Oh yeah, it was a little different back then because like it was very fresh. What I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I am still friends with the people from that game. We have a Discord server, and we are always talking. We are chatting with each other for, time and time again. They bonded so much from across the UK and the United States and even beyond. They bonded so much that my dragons created a Discord server called the Eerie, and they all just, hey, I haven't talked to you guys in a while. You guys want to watch a movie the other night? And then like they'll stage meetups and just watch movies together and wish each other happy birthday. It's been great. That whole experience was, that was a very beautiful experience for me because it was a very challenging moment in my life where I had just left Geek and Sundry. I didn't know what was going on next, and all of a sudden the opportunity to run games in the UK popped up, and I ended up bonding with everyone, and we actually did something that's a little off. This is a little adjacent to what would normally happen in D&D and Castle, but we did have a moment where one of our players, Sam Delev, who was with us at the time and doing like co-GMing and NPCing for us, was not really feeling that well, and we were going to do an event at the end of the day, and they really couldn't make it. They didn't want to leave the room, and we didn't want to leave them behind, so we asked permission from staff. Hey, is it cool if we just kind of chill? And everyone was like, yeah, go ahead, yeah, take care of each other. So we did, and we ended up hanging out in a room and just on the final day, and we met at like 10 a.m. to see how everybody was feeling, and we just started playing, and we didn't stop until 2 a.m. Like, we just played all the way through everything, and it reminded me of back when I was in high school. It's not standard procedure to do that. It was a very unique circumstance. Again, it was very fresh, but it was absolute magic. I was 16 again. We were playing D&D. We played D&D way past the time when our parents would tell us to go the hell to sleep, and we were eating junk food. Sitting in a castle overlooking the beautiful green countryside where you could see Hadrian's Wall just like outside the window. It was absolutely fantastic. It was one of the most memorable experiences I've had of my adult life, was doing that. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. We ended at 2 a.m. We were completely destroyed, and we were so happy. It was great. Nope. Muted.
Ways that people get into the hobby, but not everybody gets to have that experience. So how do you find that? And some people do that kind of experience of playing late at D&D in a castle, or playing 12 hours, whether they're in hardcore mode or they just don't finish their game, so they end up going a lot longer than they expected to in order to get to the end. But what do you think that does for the game when you have that time and space, that ability to just keep playing, and everybody's there and everybody is able to stay and committed to playing? How does that affect the game?
Yeah, this is actually one of the reasons why an event like D&D in a Castle is so brilliant, because it's I don't know about everybody else. D&D is a great way, role-playing games in general are just a really great way to bond and to reconnect and to take a breath and to step away from life for a second and do something exciting and thrilling and tell a story. But D&D in a Castle, and like an event far away in this beautiful setting where there's going to be costumes and music and food and gaming all day, it really is giving yourself permission to go on a grand adventure. You are pulling a Bilbo and running out the door. It's the reason why I say this is because that mentality and that atmosphere automatically feeds an energy into a game that you're not going to find anywhere else. You can't. The atmosphere and the commitment and the meeting strangers who are all there and eager and excited. Like, I've had great tables and bad tables all throughout my life. Everyone who shows up to D&D and Castle is eager to have a great table. You know what I mean? Like, everyone is there to explore and play and have fun. There's something about that atmosphere that I just would like. I would say that having the experience of being there and having those extra long games, it's really it opens you up. It's I can't think of any other way to say it. You have given yourself permission to play in a way that maybe is harder to do on like a quickly scheduled Saturday night game of D&D. You know what I mean? It's wholly unique. And I think people who are new to this, or people who have never done it before, or even old salts, will discover that it'll bring something out of you that maybe you haven't seen since you were a kid.
Amazing. Well, we have to wrap up. We're actually sitting here at the castle, at D&D Castle, as you can probably see from this wider shot, that we are in one of the gaming spaces at D&D Castle, and there's a one shot going to be starting here shortly. But I would like to invite you, Eric, to take us out of the interview with an invitation to the viewers to come and join you at D&D Castle this summer. Eric is going to be with us July 6th to 10th at D&D Castle USA. You can find out more at dndcastle.com. But Eric, I'm going to let you take us out with an invitation to join your campaign at D&D Castle this summer.
Yes, I'm Eric Campbell. I would love to have you guys come join my table at D&D Castle this summer, July 6th through 10th. The name of the game is The Long Game, and it is going to be taking place in Greyhawk, and it would be lovely to have somebody that would be around that might be willing to save the world. Could be useful. Come join us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for joining us, and thank you guys for joining us, and I hope we'll see you at the castle soon.
Thank you.